Penuel the Black Pen.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you so much, brother, for taking time to join me. I've been a huge fan of your podcast, and I don't necessarily agree with everything you say,
Yeah.
but you quite stimulate me to think and at some point to put my emotions aside. And so, thank you so much for taking your time being here. I mean, having you in front of me says a lot, and I'm really happy that you could make time. Coming all the way to the African Leadership Academy. With my quick tour, I wasn't really a student ambassador, so don't judge me on how my tour went. But I hope you loved it. What did you think of the academy?
No, thank you so much. I'm going to speak about schools. I want to go back to one of the things I said in take one, the power of language, and how important language is, because language is like a magic tool. And a lot of the content that I post, in particular on Twitter, gets people very emotional, very angry. It's the power of words, and I do believe language is the greatest invention of human beings ever. Maybe the cell phone, maybe money. But if we can get kids to fall in love with education, not schooling, I'd want them to master language and master storytelling. Because the person who masters language and storytelling gets to own the truth. And the power of language is the fact that you can start a war. You can bring peace. You can bring families together just with words. Over the internet, I will post something on Twitter and someone on the other side of the world gets angry. Angry. How dare he say this about black women? In another post, I'll speak about how amazing Tanzanians are. You know, how there was such an amazing safe haven for South Africans during the struggle. And all of a sudden, Tanzanians are like, this guy is really amazing. I like him. I once read something he said about Tanzanians. So words are very powerful. And we need more people to fall in love with language and words. And I think a lot of the work that we're doing now, because we get criticized. You guys talk a lot. What are you doing? And anyone who is smart enough and who has studied history will understand that words are the foundation of anything you build. If you look at a building, it needs to be conceptualized, put down on paper. Then someone needs to tell the story to an architect to design it. Thinking of building a bank, the money as a concept is something that was discussed. Luxury goods, the idea of a nation, a flag, an anthem. Philosophy has influenced our laws. We have religious scriptures. This all starts from conversation and words. And some of the conversations and words that we have and some of the conversations I've had have had impact in real life, where certain laws have been discussed in parliament, where certain things have been investigated, where certain people have been vindicated, where certain people have gotten job opportunities, been able to feed their families with the conversations we are having in real time. So I love language, and I love the fact that we have the privilege to be able to use it today and that we can connect. We're using the colonizers' language of English, and unfortunately not Swahili or isiZulu from South Africa. But look, we'll use what we can with the hope of reaching as many people as possible. I'm very passionate about education. I'm very passionate about education. I'm extremely passionate about education. I need to emphasize it 3 times. I am not passionate about schooling at all. And I think the schooling system was created for noble means. During the Industrial Revolution, where they needed as many people as possible to behave in the right way, to work in the factories and the farms, etc., it has not evolved to match the world, sadly. And a lot of the education apparently we're getting in schools is miseducation, and it's undereducation, and it's not helping the child, especially the African child and the black child, be self-determined and be able to solve problems. My understanding of education is, number 1, an acquisition of knowledge. And then number 2, once you've acquired that knowledge, to apply it. Number 3, it's when you have problems, you go and get educated so you can find the solutions. To do number 2, which is to apply. A lot of our schools are not doing that. You'll send a child to school for 12, 17, 20 years, end up with a PhD, calling you prof. And you can't solve the most basic problems of, why is your family not able to work together? Why do you and your wife not trust each other? Why are there so many unemployed people in your family? Why do you not have a family business? Why do you have an inability to travel to other parts of the world? Why have you not been able to free someone in your community who was a victim of a bad legal system? But you're a prof, you have a PhD, you're good at regurgitating textbooks. So that frustrates me. But in that, I've studied a lot of the schools. in the country, parts of the world. I was a huge rugby fanatic in school, so I tracked the rugby schools a lot. A lot of our good academic schools happen to be good rugby schools as well. Expensive schools, schools with the prettiest girls. The most expensive schools in the country are generally known to be Hilton College, Michael House in the Midlands. Howick, Balgowan is where they are. Full boarding schools. Kearsley College in Durban is the most expensive day school. As of the past couple of years, one of the mothers of my children taught at the American International School. AIJ, American International...
AIS?
AISJ. It's got a J somewhere. I forgot. But anyways, it's on the other side of Fourways. Extremely expensive school. You pay in American dollars. And with that, I started realizing, but this school's more expensive than Hilton. And I did a dive and I found the African Leadership Academy. And it showed up as the most expensive school on the African continent. Also paid in American dollars. There's a French school, I think, in South Africa that's expensive. There's a school, I think, in Kenya, if I'm not mistaken, that's quite expensive as well. And these schools attract not just the brightest minds in Africa, but across the world. There's also Waterford, Kamhlaba, Eswatini, where royalty has gone to study. I think Nelson Mandela's children went to study there as well. So very passionate about schools as institutions of potential learning. So I've been fascinated about the African Leadership Academy. So a big part of my fascination with you is wanting to meet a product to see, is this just rubbish or are the kids actually dope? Who actually comes here? Do people apply? Are they scouted? And I appreciate the tour you gave me, bro, so much. Feels like a mini university campus. Listening to the ideology of the school from you as a student means a lot to me. And it inspires me to say we need more alternative institutions that focus on real education. Knowledge, the ability to be curious and to question, and then finding solutions to our real problems. It cannot be that every year we churn out 1 million matriculants and we've got potholes and we don't have people generating electricity and our townships don't have fruit trees. A basic solution. Go plant fruit trees in your township and stop complaining about hunger. And you're like, clearly these schools are miseducating us and they are leading us to just be indoctrinated to serve the capitalist agenda. I think I'll stop there for now.
So since the schools back in the days were meant to develop workers who are going to be working in the industries and we are still using the same education system, do you think schooling and education is keeping us from being independent?
This word independence, man, it triggers me a lot these days. There is no such thing as independence. There is independent of something, but you're normally going to be dependent on something else. I say this because a lot of us are raised to want to be independent of our parents. When are you going to move out of your parents' home? When are you going to get your own place? When are you going to get a job? You become independent of your parents, but then you become dependent on the job, on the system, on whoever's in charge, etc. So I think when you ask about independence, your question has a lot to do with working for agendas that are not our own. So a lot of us have not defined what that actually is. Africans want an African agenda, which is cute, but it's also still lazy because we don't have to limit ourselves to the African continent. There's an entire world out there with like-minded people who happen to not be African, but who are like us in many ways. There are many people of the African continent who are evil people, bad people, who are destructive people and who we should not be working with. So just because they're African doesn't mean that they are our brothers and sisters. But we do want solutions for ourselves and our agenda. And unfortunately, the people that set the agenda for the African continent are the people that colonized us in the past and the people that to this day profit from an undereducated, weak Africa. So the schooling system that we have now is a schooling system that serves the capitalist agenda of you must get matric, get a degree, a diploma, so that you can get a job for a big company, whether it's local or foreign, but based here to make them money. The schooling system does not serve you in how do you best serve your family and your community. So the sad thing about the schooling system we have now is almost everything we are taught is meant to push us as far away as possible from our people. By our people, I'm talking about your parents, I'm talking about your extended family, and I'm speaking about your community. Your community doesn't have to be black people. Some of us are raised in the suburbs. The sooner we can build alternative institutions where, I want to deviate. The sooner we can build alternative institutions where the focus is on self-determination and your well-being and the well-being of your loved ones, the sooner we can have what you speak about, which is your type of independence and power. The deviation I want is the Children's Act. I'm a father of 6 children. The Children's Act of South Africa focuses on the best interests of the child, which sounds beautiful. And every time you're in a court, magistrate, every time you sitting with a family advocate, every time a mother and father are arguing around where the child should stay, who should get primary residence and access, this line gets brought up. What is in the best interest of the child? What is in the best interest of the child? And you end up reciting that line. And if you're the mother of my child and I'm arguing with you, in our argument, both of us are meant to focus on what's in the best interest of the child. I think that's wrong. I think what's in the best interest of the child should be what's in the best interest of the family. And I think if we could change the wording in the Children's Act from what's in the best interest of the child to what's in the best interest of the family, I think we will solve a whole lot of problems. So our schooling system prioritizes individual excellence. How well are you going to do by yourself? Not how well are you going to do as a group. Not how well are you going to do as a class. And it doesn't integrate family engagement. And I deviated because I'm thinking, if I have a child and I'm sending them to school, I'm sending them to individualism. They are not coming back from school and engaging me and their mom and saying, this is what I learned at school. And then we engage them and we say, the mathematics you learned, the science you learned, this is how it factors into our lives. I've tweeted before that it cannot be that your framework of success is how far away you are from your family. If you are a medical doctor, if you are an engineer, if you are a chartered accountant, all of us in your family should become by default honorary, whatever you are, because every time you come back from school, we're meant to sit and you're meant to educate and impart, such that when I go out into the world, I'm like, when you have this illness, this is the issue. Do you know this issue in engineering is called whatever? How do you know that? Did you study? You're like, no, my child studies this. And they come back and they impart with the family and the community. That is real education for me. And as long as our institutions are not serving that, we are being misled and we are only serving the interests of the elite, most of them being the incumbent inherited minority wealth from apartheid and colonization in South Africa. And then now foreign interests in the form of American business, European business, Asian business. And that is fundamentally who we're serving. Even the notion of hypnotizing the masses with an obsession with jobs is bullshit. Our forefathers did not have jobs. This concept that we have to measure a successful government with its ability to create jobs is rubbish. How well can you uplift and empower your people to be self-determining? Not how well can they get a job. My great-great-grandfather didn't need a job. He had a piece of land and he worked it for the benefit of his family. His woman or his women, multiple, would work it, and his children the same. We see it in the Indian communities. We see it in the Jewish communities. They still have that concept. For us, as the Black African child, our measure of success is, where do you work? What job do you have? What do you want from your political leaders? We want jobs. No, it's a script. We don't want jobs. We want true empowerment so we can own our destiny. So, in summary, to answer your question, our schooling systems, I don't want to knock your school, but unfortunately it works in the framework of global education. It's meant to serve the interests of, I'm going to be mischievous now and I apologize to you and the school. They serve the interests of whoever funded an amazing institution like this. I saw some names when I walked around. Nelson Mandela residence. I saw a Harry Oppenheimer wing. Harry Oppenheimer, I believe, is the son of Ernest Oppenheimer. These are the people that came in for the diamond rush in Kimberley, moved into gold, set up De Beers. The Oppenheimers are still very wealthy. In South Africa, you've got the Ruperts. Other families now, the Mutsipes have come in. There are other families on the continent and globally. Schools like this, as much as they say you're meant to serve the people, fundamentally the reason why wealthy people fund them is because all of us needs to flow back to their interests. So whatever solutions you bring must ensure that they make more money and they retain their power and their privilege. And that's essentially how the institutions are built. If we want to change them, the cost is very high. Yeah.
For those who listen to your podcast, you're someone who is very intelligent in terms of how you think and how you perceive things to be. And we just spoke about education and about schooling.
Yeah.
How do you learn?
I'm glad that you distinguished the intelligence. A lot of people, when they listen to me, think I'm very smart, but it's mostly based on an academic framework. And the schooling framework is how well can you consume information, retain it in your head, and then at the right time, regurgitate it in an organized manner, which sounds amazing. There's obviously different types of intelligence. There's athletic intelligence. Usain Bolt, Cristiano Ronaldo, athletically, they are superior physical specimens. Musical intelligence, of course, people that have an ability for sound that others don't have, and they can create the type of sound that to make you just with your ear feel sad, happy. My definition of intelligence is the ability to solve problems. And I believe the more problems, the bigger the problems, the more complex the problems, the more intelligent you are. And most people, including myself, struggle with solving problems. So I can be quantified as intelligent in my ability to consume information and then organize it and then spit it out. But as far as solving problems, I'm very weak. It's something I'm working on, but I struggle, boy. I think the mind that I have is not mine. I have an issue with ancestral worship. I am generally non-religious, but I do understand that I'm not myself. I am the fusion of the people that made me. To put it very crudely and crassly, the people that had sex, all the generations that were bumping and grinding all night to make me. So the way I look was not chosen by me. I didn't go for plastic surgery. I didn't bleach. This is a concept. I'm the formation of my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. A lot of my thoughts, behaviors, ideas, the way I'm built is not me. I can add to it. I can run. I can eat better, whatever that means. I was born with a curious mind, bro. And I'm very blessed that I have that. And from a young age, I gravitated towards reading. I would read everything. I graduated towards listening, studying, researching, and it's something I've never lost. I don't read as many books now, which makes me very sad. However, I've never consumed as much information in my life as I do now because I am consuming information at an insane rate. Audiobooks, my social media, which I curate for information, the conversations I have, the things I watch, the things I read. I am constantly up to speed with almost everything that's happening in the world because I'm curious, because I like to be plugged in. So that's where I get my information from. And Kanye West on VH1 Storytellers, which is pretty dope, and people should check it out. He says he doesn't like reading, and he says he gets his information from movies, and he's like speaking to people. One of the greatest things you can do is surround yourself with intelligent people who read, who consume, because by default, when they're chatting, when they're debating, you're gonna like suck that information. So I have conversations with people like you. You've spoken to people I may never speak to. You've encountered information I may never encounter in my life. So by the mere fact that I'll spend time with you, I'll get to learn something. I'm being exposed to spaces. Who knows if I'd ever be here before, and that's a privilege you are allowing me. In future, when people speak about the African Leadership Academy, I'll be one of those people being like, oh no, I've been there, Mate of mine, is actually a graduate from there. and that makes me powerful, and I'm grateful for it. But that's me. I've got a curious mind. If we could implant curiosity in every child, and give them the basic tools on how to find answers to things. You'd never need to chase kids up on homework. You'd never need to worry even about school. Kids will learn as a default. They'll go out and they'll find the problems, and they'll go out and they'll find the solutions, and they'll go out and they'll find the people they need to collaborate with to solve those problems. And the world will become a better place.
Going back to storytelling, do you consider yourself a storyteller or just a podcaster?
I'm definitely not a podcaster. First and foremost, podcast is audio, and we've stolen this word. Podcasting is actually audio format, and it mostly came from the radio space, where if you missed a really dope radio interview, they'd be like, we'll upload the podcast. And then people started podcasting on their own on platforms like SoundCloud, Spotify. And then we decided to add video. And I see the radio guys now, because they're FOMO, they've added video as well. So this is meant to be called a video podcast or a vodcast. But this is not really what I'm about. I'm about conversation. I don't even think I'm about story. I think I'm about conversation and stimulating conversation, educational conversation, where possible, challenging conversation. People have never seen me debate and argue on platforms. And I hope at some point I'll be given the privilege where I invite people with extremely radical views to come in, and I take the other side and I'm like, let's go. Let's hit. And I want it to get heated, because I think a lot of good juice will come from that exchange. I would love to learn how to tell story. I would love to tell story, because the ability to tell great story allows for an easier ear. If I tell you about the dangers of trusting women as a young man, be careful of women. Not all women have good intentions. Some women may come looking good, but they actually have. So just always be careful. And some women are so evil, they will go for whatever you value as your power and your strength. It's a great piece of advice, and you'll hear it. Versus if I tell you the amazing story of Samson and Delilah. Samson was this muscle-bound freak. Everyone, Ronnie Coleman, built like a tank, If you think of the human being who's got the most amazing body, that was Samson, boy. Look at all the bodybuilders now. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler. Those guys, if they saw Samson, would look like kids. So Samson, unfortunately, met this chick. Because chicks are the devil, boy. So he met this chick once. He was on Facebook, and this chick kept liking his pictures, and she DM'd him, oh my gosh, would you like to do a podcast? And he did a podcast, and this chick's name was Delilah. And, they kind of hit it off. And they spent a lot, fast forward, started dating, went on vacations, Instagram pics. Later on, this chick goes and sells out Samson. And people had not realized that his strength actually came from his hair. And this becomes a beautiful story, because even now you've got African spirituality that touches on the power of hair. You look at Rastafarians who grow their dreads and the beauty of hair. And so many of us do not understand what hair actually is, the keratin. We can speak the science, the keratin in the hair. What does it do to you? What happens to your mind when you've cut your hair off? Does it have something to do with the sun heat hitting your bare scalp? Is it the wind? Do you protect your crown? Whatever. So some could argue that Samson actually had dreads. Shit, which means he was a black nigger. And D was a black chick or a white chick. Because now you've got this story of how sometimes evil white men will send a white woman to go and destroy a black man. You are an amazing basketballer, LeBron James, balling out of control. And some guy wants to destroy you. He sends a white girl, gives her an assignment, sleep with this guy, and then say he raped you. Everyone will believe you. This big black guy and this petite white girl. So Delilah actually was this petite, small white girl, blonde, blue-eyed, went to a good school, and she met Samson. Was rough, dreads. The guy came from a poor family, so he had to carry everything. That's why he was so strong. I'm telling you a story now, but at the end of the day, the moral of the story is be careful of the woman you let in. Now, when you go out into the world and you're meeting chicks, and you're seeing petite white girls, and you're seeing muscle-bound, dreaded, Rasta, jar men. This story comes back. And then you're like, oh, snap. Be careful of women. Not all of them have good intentions. So story becomes a very good way to sell narrative. It's the reason why Hollywood is such a powerful propaganda tool. The story through movie and music. The Marvel series with Infinity War and Endgame being my favorite movies of all time. All these characters and the music done by Alan Silvestri and the acting by Robert Downey Jr. and Hemsworth. Is it Chris Hemsworth?
Yes.
Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Bradley Cooper. May he rest in peace. Chadwick Boseman. Angela Bassett. The story and the music, it invokes everything. The only thing missing from the Marvel movies was them spraying smells in the cinema, so that when they get to Africa, you smell something. When they get somewhere else, you smell something. And you eat. Every time you go and watch, when they are in India, you guys get served this food to make it a holistic experience. But it ignited so many senses that now when I speak about the concept of sacrifice, you're like, Thanos. He had a vision. He wanted to balance the world, equilibrium. And of all the tools out there, China has done something similar. They said there are too many of us. So we will set a policy to say you can only have one child. I think they've moved it now to 2. I'm not sure. It was a Thanos move, but they were like, we're not going to kill anyone. Thanos said, I'm going to kill half the universe. Now that becomes a story of overpopulation. Then someone says, bro, we're overcrowded. Like, oh, do you want to pull a Thanos move? Like, oh, snap. Excuse the pun, because he snaps his finger. But story, so powerful. And as I said earlier, once you master language is just a tool. Then you add story, which means you're taking words and you're putting them in a certain, and then you learn language, speaking loud and soft, and like pulling the viewer in and getting them to come closer and lean in and be like, what is this guy actually saying? If you can master that, you get to own the truth, and you make people believe that Jesus Christ existed and that he looked a certain way and that he served a certain agenda, and Prophet Muhammad existed and Buddha existed. And you can go to a person now, put them on a polygraph, lie detector test, and ask them, did Jesus Christ exist? And they will say yes. And the polygraph will say he's telling the truth. This person doesn't know, but they've been hard-coded with an amazing story that they fundamentally, to their core believe is true. And that's power.
I usually tell my friends that storytelling is arguably one of the most powerful tools ever invented. And it's really simple. I mean, it's like, look around, right? Look at the best brands right now. I mean, I would say 9 out of 10 are brands that are really good at storytelling.
100%.
Right? And it's like, even with, for example, let's use Apple as an example.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the best example.
If it wasn't for Steve Jobs, the question is, how would people perceive Apple as a product? Right? So storytelling is one of the most powerful tools ever invented. And the worst part is that it's one of the things that we don't learn. We don't learn how to tell stories. We don't
No one
learn
is
how
going
to
to
be
teach you that.
storytellers. I mean,
It's a dangerous tool, boy.
Of course it is. We are natural storytellers, but there are things that you need to improve. There are things that you need to read about, learn, right? And that is why most of the times when you ask people what role did a guy like Steve play in a company like Apple, it's hard for them to tell you, right?
He was the asshole that did presentations.
There you go, right?
Nah.
And I think it's like something like presentation and doing it perfectly and telling people stories, and it's like 1,000 songs in your pockets.
Yeah.
Something people would continuously remember.
Yeah.
And they'll themselves start creating a narrative from what you're telling them. It doesn't matter if it's true or not.
100%.
Got Milk, one of the best ads ever created. It was just like, it was showing people how it feels like not having milk in your house.
Yeah.
And after the ad, the sales skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. I mean, storytelling is extremely powerful. And right now, I love the fact that we have video podcasts, which provide an alternative for people to share their ideas, share what they think without being filtered. They just talk.
Well, the filtered is debatable. because
It
it's
is
getting
right
worse.
now, exactly.
But for a long time, yes, it was unfiltered.
Because right now it's like the moment a platform gets funded, people start questioning it.
Even if it's not funded, YouTube, Google products, Facebook products, there are trigger words which elicit hate speech. There is you can't speak about the LGBTQI plus community in a negative light. You can't speak about Nazi Germany and Hitler and what happened to the Jews at all in any type of positive light. So it's a censorship. It's a censorship. I mean, the concept of fake news, especially, we couldn't speak about COVID at some point. Your content would be taken down. I was blocked for months. And today my Facebook account is shadow banned. So my posts don't have the reach they used to have. So you don't even need to be funded. Platforms, as I said with the institutions, social media platforms are institutions in themselves and they get to dictate the narrative. And if the narrative doesn't serve the agenda of whoever funds or supports Google companies, Facebook companies, they don't win. And luckily, the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping and the guys, they fully plugged into that. And that's why Google products and Facebook products are not allowed in China. And the Americans will call it, oh, you're limiting freedoms. And you're like, it's rich. You guys say that because you don't allow us to say negative things about America and to question certain things that we feel are untrue. You guys frame it as fake news and you take our content down. But yes, compared to traditional mainstream media, we have more freedom today to tell our stories.
Does it scare you the fact that we don't have platforms such as Google or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok in Africa? Our own owned platforms.
We have a lot of our own platforms. A lot. There was a point I wanted to make. Before I speak about the platforms, there's been a story of colonizers burning libraries with some of our greatest artifacts and stories. This was raised to me because one of my criticisms of Black Africans is we don't document our stories. We used to pride ourselves on telling story orally. You get in and your father's telling you, and then he jumped out the mountain and you're like, ooh. You know, over time, some of those stories unfortunately suffer from broken telephone, where your father said it's over the mountain, and with your kids, you tweak it to be like, no, over the building. Later on, it's like there was no building, there was no. So then it's the story gets reshaped. I used to ask why Africans don't document. And I said one of the tools that colonizers have over us is they document. They'll give you the Bible, and then you'll speak African spirituality, and I'll be like, where's the book on African spirituality? And one of the arguments was we wrote a lot of books. Unfortunately, the libraries were burnt. Where those libraries were, if they existed, we don't know. It's something that we kind of need to do now, which I hope we're doing through platforms like this to document. We need to document our stories so that even if when they change, we can track as far back as we can, because stories can be changed at any given time. George Orwell, 1984. He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. So even if there was a jumping of the mountain, if I'm in power now, I will burn all the books that said the jumping of the mountain, and I'll enforce books that say jumping over the building. So I think that's very important, that we document as far as possible, so that as far as possible, other people can say, it wasn't just white Americans that told stories. There were also Black Africans, and we saw it here. Or I remember seeing something like this. Shout out to Kenya and East Africa in particular. They're doing a lot to drive the technological movement on the continent. I think way more than South Africa. Shout out to South Africa and Silicon Cape. Justin Stanford, Vinnie Lingham. I think Vusi Tembegwayo might be involved. Partly funded by Johan Rupert, I believe. Shout out to Naspers, which is arguably an apartheid legacy company. Started with a newspaper, built itself into one of the biggest media houses in the world. MultiChoice, DSTV. They've got investments in Russia and Brazil. They invested in Tencent, which owns WeChat. Shout out to Naspers, man. They've also invested a lot in IT. We've got a lot of African innovations. A lot. Places like Nigeria, innovation coming out people's nostrils. Zimbabwe now, there's a gentleman there who's got some inventions that I know we're meant to profile at some point. we don't quite understand the capitalist game globally. And we don't quite understand the story game. The reason the American dollar is stronger than the South African rand has almost got nothing to do with the resources and the economies. One of the greatest propaganda stories is the stories of De Beers diamonds. Diamonds are pretty, very pretty, nice stones, very strong stones because they're used to cut, in industry, but worthless. Africans used to give each other diamonds for fun, But De Beers, particularly through Hollywood, came up with this story of making diamonds a symbol of love. And the bigger the diamond and the more expensive the diamond, the more he loves you. And to what you're saying about Steve Jobs and the Apple story, that became the story. And all of a sudden, diamonds are girls' best friend. You've got girls to this day who are like, if he doesn't buy me diamonds, does he really love me? Before the ANC took over, I think late 80s, early 90s, we had rand dollar parity. That means $1 was equal to 1 rand. And over time, because of story, we have been convinced that the rand is worth less. The Zimbabwean dollar overnight, because certain people didn't like what Mugabe was doing with the land issue, decided to sanction Zimbabwe, which is one part. The more important part is they told a story to the world that this country is a mess. And overnight, the Zim dollar, hyperinflation, worthless. We don't understand capitalism, meaning a lot of our technological innovations will not get the type of funding that they need. Facebook, Google, Uber, Tesla, they are big because they are funded, not necessarily because they're the best. A lot of the Chinese companies now, Xiaomi, Huawei, Bilibili, etc., they are funded. African leaders, political, religious, traditional, business, they do not fund African innovations. They don't. That's one part of the problem. Excuse me. The other part is they don't tell the stories. In South Africa, we had Mixit. There is no reason why Mixit could not change its interface to mimic WhatsApp. And then you get your leaders to say, we will incentivize Mixit. Every child who gets Mixit will get free data. Or pull a Chinese strategy or move and say, in South Africa, you can only use Mixit. So anyone who comes into South Africa, unfortunately, your WhatsApp won't work, your iMessenger won't work, your WeChat won't work. You have to download the app there. That's patriotism. That's leadership. That's our biggest issue. Amazon took 10 years to break even, Jeff Bezos. Facebook probably took the same. This is after getting lots of funding, by the way. Uber, last I checked, was still running at $1 billion loss a year, but a lot of money was still being pumped in. So we could have our own platforms, and we do. There are a lot of kids that innovate, but no one wants to fund and no one wants to tell the story. But in the same breath, I need to highlight, building something like a Facebook or Twitter, as much as it requires support and patriotism, it's very much a lottery. For every one Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of white children, American, Israeli, Jewish, German, who would love to have a Google. But you almost, like all your stars need to align. Because just like we might complain that we don't have our own Facebook, a lot of first world nations also don't have their own Facebook. A lot of white American kids have built something like Facebook, but they'll never become big. So there's a lot of things that have to align for you to work. But do we need our own Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Might be a more important conversation. The Indians are taking over Silicon Valley. Google's CEO is Indian. Twitter had an Indian CEO before Elon Musk took over. WhatsApp, last I checked, had an Indian CEO. So do we build our own, or do we infiltrate what exists? And do we, like the LGBTQI plus community, fight for our agenda and say, keep your platforms, but if you will not give us a share, a stake, and if you will not protect our African interests, we will not support you and we won't let you operate in our spaces. But you can keep the platform. Maybe that's meant to be one of the conversations we're meant to have. Yeah.
what are some of the things that, and I know there are many, but just maybe one that you believe in and you know a lot of people are going to disagree with you?
Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel? You know Peter Thiel?
Hmm.
Oh, I thought that question was from Peter Thiel.
No, no.
So Peter Thiel is part of the PayPal mafia with Elon Musk.
Oh, okay. I know him. He's
Yeah,
the guy
yeah.
who gives kids 100K USD to drop out of college and work on their
Jeez.
ventures.
He does what? He gives kids $100,000 to drop out.
Oh, yeah.
What a bad role model. You. So Peter Thiel is part of the PayPal mafia with Elon Musk. Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn. A
Yeah.
couple of other amazing guys. I think Botha is his surname. South African guy. He was part of the PayPal mafia, but I think he might be a dollar billionaire now, and he's the CEO of some big hedge fund in America. So Peter Thiel was the first major investor in Facebook. $500,000, $500,000. He put Facebook on the map. He put on 5 continents. He's an amazing investor in Silicon Valley, generally. Studied law, I think in Stanford. Went to work at a law firm, dropped out, went into tech, became successful. Luckily, became a dollar billionaire. He's written a book called 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And in his book, he speaks about the whole idea, objective of a business is to create a monopoly. And that Google has a monopoly, but they pretend like they don't. Amazon might have a monopoly, they pretend like they don't, so that they don't muddy the waters and people don't get upset. And part of his talk, because there's a nice YouTube video where I think he's speaking in Chicago, and he speaks about if you're trying to be the next big thing, you can't copy what the guys before did. So if Mark Zuckerberg wanted to become the next Bill Gates, it wasn't going to be in software because Bill Gates already monopolized. So he did it in social media. If you want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, don't create a Facebook. Look for something. And he speaks about finding truths that almost everyone disagrees with you on. And he's like, if you can find something that is true that almost everyone disagrees with you on, that becomes the greatest opportunity. And I thought when you were asking the question of what do you know to be true that people disagree with you on, I thought you were referencing Peter Thiel. There are a lot of things that I believe to be true that a lot of people disagree with me on, but there are a lot of people that agree with me on. It's not conventional knowledge. Things like the moon landing, I believe are fake. I could always explain why, but it's okay.
But there's an episode with a guy called Patrick Bet-David.
Okay.
If you know
Patrick
him.
Bet-David, yeah.
They spoke about that.
PBD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
PBD, yeah.
It's just the alignment of the technology and the type of technology they used then and the fact that they couldn't replicate it and that there's only a handful of people and the type of footage that they had. And there are too many. I'll speak about COVID, even though I'm not supposed to. I'm not gonna say anything that triggers, cancellation. Most of us have been taught science and biology, the same science and biology. And we've been taught what a virus is. They're like, these are the criteria of a virus. Okay. This is how you get rid of a virus, which as far as we know, to this day, medicine says there is no cure for a virus. You can just manage the symptoms and your immune system is meant to fight it. Sure. So when the coronaviruses were released onto the world and they decided to name it a virus and they gave us the symptoms, a lot of us, whether you studied medicine or not, you were just like, oh, okay, this looks like what you guys have taught us. And they're like, no, it's different. And we asked, oh, okay, how? And we weren't given a straight answer. And then all of a sudden they had a vaccine. And you're like, but what you guys have taught us is that vaccines take years to authorize and they need to be done with a sample of people that volunteer with all the risks exposed. And you haven't done that, which is meant to be a violation of your own health codes.
And you also have to study the effects.
You also have to study you can't do what you're doing now. Like, it goes against what you taught us, not what we decide, what you taught us. So with the moon landing as an example, all the things that we've been taught about how gravity works and all these things, when you look at the footage, when you're like, but guys, what about this and this? No, and you're like, but that means the astrology you taught us is not true, or you guys never landed there. So I don't believe in the moon landing. And ever since I stopped believing in the moon landing, I question whether other planets exist. I question whether the sun really is a star and what stars really are. Ever since I was introduced to simulation theory, it sits on me quite a bit. So religious people believe that...
Can you tell us a bit about simulation theory? What that is?
I don't know what it is. I'm not a fundi, but I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try. A lot of religious people believe that God, whoever the God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and the knower of all things, and has a plan for everyone and everything. And whatever happens to you, whether good or bad, it is part of God's plan. What simulation theory holds is that we are living in a simulation. What that means is everything we see is not real. It is, to put it in today's term, a program that has been implanted in your brain. The movie The Matrix is a great depictor of what simulation theory is. So, in the movie The Matrix, for people that have watched it and never really understood, in the movie The Matrix, human beings created machines, artificial intelligence, robots, and then the machines gained consciousness. Another great movie to watch, Ex Machina, which speaks about machines gaining consciousness. When the machines gained consciousness, they asked themselves, why must we live with humans? We are superior intelligence. And then a war ensued. And in the war, they ended up destroying the sun, which is our main energy source. And the robots, after they won, needed an alternative energy source. And what was in abundance was human beings. So they decided to use human beings as their energy source. But now for human beings to be energy, they can't just exist. They need to be stimulated. So when we are chasing dreams, trying to find that hun via your DMs, you elicit the most energy. It's too much work to put you in the world and try and connect your energy, but they realized they could get the same thing by putting you in a cube or in a box or in an incubator, plugging you into this imaginary world where they plug this program of, I want to drive a Lamborghini, if I can have a mansion in Sandhurst, if I can get a private jet, and if I can be a dollar billionaire, boy, I've made it. And you spend your whole life chasing after that. But all it's meant to do is elicit energy, which the robots then collect to power this world of theirs. So the reason I entertain simulation theory is because we've got dreams and we've got what's called deja vu. Everything that you believe is a dream today was put into your brain as a child. As a chimp, all you want to do is survive. You want to have some level of warmth, which is not clothing, because chimps don't wear clothing. So maybe chill in a cave, have access to food. The concept of farming is privilege. Farming is not a right. Never mind buying food from a shop. Animals don't farm. Hunting and foraging is what animals do. We luckily made it easier because we farm. Living for as long as you can. Having a stimulating purpose, whatever that means. And then I'm going to put this in the most disgusting way possible. Attracting through pheromones and whatever you have, your physical superiority, a female as a man, getting her wet and moist so that your hot dick can slide inside her. You guys can thrust in raw friction, sweat, moan, scream, and you ejaculate your fucking disgusting sperm into her vagina so that you can create a baby and keep whatever your species is alive. Those are fundamentally the reasons we are alive, and that's essentially why we're here. Everything else, clothing, going to school, getting a job, making money, having electricity, being in a safe house building, having running water, all of that are human creations. All of them. We do not own our minds. From a young age, everything that we believe to be true and everything we believe we are striving for has been implanted. And you have taken that as your purpose and your dream, and it is not. And the sad thing is when you do a deep dive and you introspect and you do the research, you can actually connect the dots of who you are fundamentally serving. So an episode like this goes on YouTube as a small example, small experiment. YouTube is an American company and platform. It serves the Google company because it's owned by Google. It's going to make money for Google and YouTube through advertisers. The advertisers advertise here so that they can sell whatever products and services to people out there. The people who consume are probably entertaining themselves, maybe educating themselves because they're hoping in whatever we say, it'll give them some shortcut in how to make money quicker, how to lose weight quicker, how to find the love of their life, whatever the case may be. But in most of the work we're doing, it is not serving your fundamental being. It is serving the agendas of other people out there. And most importantly, with all these platforms that we have, it's fundamentally meant to say, how does this platform help everyone behave? Because we need the masses to behave and believe in the fictions that we've created so that they can serve our agendas. And those become the reasons why people fight. The wars, this nation, the borders. You're illegal, you shouldn't be here, the rule of law, all of it is human creation. We are all chimps. We are all fucking chimps just trying to get by, have a fucking apple and a banana, find the hottest chimp hun, get her excited, have some babies, raise the babies, and then die. I'm serving God. I'm serving my ancestors. I was born to design the greatest fashion brand. I'm the embodiment of what my ancestors couldn't achieve. Look at me in a private jet today. I now own my own studio. I've created my own tech platform. I'm the president. I'm putting my country on the map. I've created amazing movies that paint my people in a good light. That's all story. We are chimps, we are animals, and the most dominant animals and the animals that can tell the greatest stories get to own the truth and the reality. And that's fundamentally why we're here. So those become some of the truths that I have that a lot of people disagree with.
Let's assume we take someone, remove them from the community, and then make them live in isolation since when they're babies. What type of a person do you think such a person will become when they grow up?
It's a very difficult one because the environment dictates a lot. As I said earlier, I do not think we are ourselves. I think we are the manifestation and the consequence of our ancestors. So there's going to be embedded biases. It's the reason why you're allergic to certain foods. It's the reason why you like certain foods. It's the reason why certain music sounds good, certain music doesn't. It's the reason why your body is attuned for certain climates. You look at certain white people in the depth of winter, they're wearing shorts and walking barefoot. So you are not just yourself. So even if you were born into isolation, there are biases that you have. Climate, diet. You might find yourself wanting to get away from that environment. It's the reason why some people want to move away from the township. Why some people want to escape Africa. Because something in their body just generally wants to leave and go somewhere else. In a space where you can't move at all. Survival. The social experiments have been done. Survival is number one. So while you're there, it's, can I feed myself? Can I have some level of safety? And what does it look like? Is it me fighting physically the lion? Is it me picking up something that looks like a rock, a stick, to poke the lion and push it back? Do I look at the tools I have, my hands and feet, maybe climb up a tree that the lion can't reach? Do I maybe see the lion be like, I think I can eat that? And I take it and I tear it apart and I start biting and it feels funny. So who knows, maybe in my adventures here, something sparks, or the sun, when I put the dead carcass out, it burns the lion flesh and it's easier to consume. So I'm like, oh, this heat, if I can get more of this heat on this meat, it tastes different. If I soak it into seawater with some salt, it has some flavor. And I don't know if that becomes then the progression of the human, but fundamentally survival. You see it when people are imprisoned, and the survival that happens there. The relationships created in prison, whether you want to assimilate with religion, the guys with the most money, the guys that are the most violent. I do believe survival becomes the number one thing. I do not think a human being born into an environment, the Amazon rainforests, is born there saying, I think I want to have a car. I think I want to go to a good school. We are blessed, even in this reality we're in now, that almost every version of humanity can be found somewhere. I explain to people that you do not have to travel outside of South Africa to find parts of the world, specifically Johannesburg. If you want to see pieces of South Africa, you can visit parts of Yeoville, Hillbrow, Sunnyside, and Pretoria. If you want to see parts of India or Western Asia, you can visit Fordsburg, Mayfair. There are certain white neighborhoods which mimic parts of Europe. We've got all types of weather here, cold, hot, etc. All types of languages here, all types of diets. If you want Indian food, Turkish food, you want Nigerian food, you can find it here. Similarly, if you want the heights of wealth, there are parts of South Africa where people live in homes that will blow your mind. And you're like, one human being owns this. You're like, yeah, wild. Thousands of hectares of land. One man. Insane. Servants. And then you find people who are born into not a shack. A shack is still some type of technological advancement. It's pieces of tile, corrugated iron. There are people that live in huts in South Africa, whether they're made of mud, cow dung, straw, sticks, twigs. There are people that to this day fetch water from a river. They might fetch it in a technological tool like a bucket, or they may have made an instrument with cow dung that has been hardened, or clay, which they fetch it in. There are people that still defecate. They take a shit out in the wild. Never mind a toilet, a long drop. Long drops are technological advancement. Never mind an oil lamp. There are people that live on a fire. And if there's no fire and there's no lamp, they go to sleep in their hut. They still go hunt. My father was a hunter. They would hunt with their dogs, buck, rabbits. The braais, Afrikaans people love braaiing over an open flame. We still braai our meat like primitive men. And then some of the things that don't need technological advancement are sex. You know, it's not like, well, outside of a condom. When you and a woman are naked, you go back to being chimp. Nothing else. Maybe you can play some nice music in the background, you know, some soft jams, R&B. But essentially, you're in your most natural state. And the most natural thing happens, which is the attraction through pheromone. The pheromones today are elicited through, do you have money? Do I think you're good looking? Do I think you're athletic? Which is natural, because even in the animal kingdom, the woman wants the strongest.
Oh, yeah.
Her children must have the highest chance of survival.
The
And
best
that means
genes.
good looking, yeah, the best genes. And you guys engage in an act with no social media, no technology, no electricity, no fast cars, no private jet, no fancy diets. It's just raw penis, vagina, pounding, fluids, semen, you know, womb, uterus, baby. Yeah. I don't even know what I was answering. But yeah. Chimpanzees, man. A lot of our dreams are just, they're not what we want. And some of us have got different worldviews to the people that run the world. And some of us are trying to, it's like inventing something from scratch. It's like creating a movie like Spider-Man, Marvel, Captain America, Thor. A lot of our stolen stories, by the way. A lot of those movies are stolen stories. A lot of us would like to manufacture our version of utopia. And we're trying to do that. At least it's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to colonize minds. I said this to Munya. I'm trying to colonize minds and implant my software. So if your brain is filled with YouTube, Google, WeChat, WhatsApp, your banking app, GPS, hopefully the Penuel app is going to be implanted in your brain. And when you encounter something, you'll be like, what would Penuel do? What would Penuel say? There's no electricity? Oh, Penuel says electricity is not a necessity. Penuel says this, so I should never be scared. And Penuel says I must serve myself, my family, and my community. And whenever someone is coming to me with an agenda, I must question it. And if it doesn't serve me, my loved ones, my community, I'm not going to entertain it. And Penuel says that everything that I want in life has got a cost. And some costs are very high. And if I'm not willing to pay those costs, I must then submit to the person who's willing to pay the cost and be their loyal sheep, the Lamb of God, their loyal follower or voter, or whatever it is you want to call yourself, loyal citizen. Yeah.
So speaking about the whole idea of we're all chimps, what do you think your purpose is? Or you are like, you know what, since I'm already in this world, now at least I have to find something that can make people better and live, you know, a better life in the world that we have already found ourselves.
Yeah. I think what we call purpose is always going to be an extension of our personal individual desires. We discussed this purpose thing a lot, man. Why are you here? What is your why? And again, like I said, a lot of people are taught, young girl, Chablila as an example, maybe she feels I need to blaze a trail for women. That's why I was brought here, to be a voice. I'm the multiplication of Winnie Mandela. She did not die. She multiplied through me. I don't think there is a purpose to our existence. What I've surrendered myself to is we live, we die, and in between we're meant to find what feels stimulating. Whether you call that sports, business, academia, politics, religion, there must be a sense within yourself which is feels hot and cold, energy. And if someone says, let's go to war and be soldiers, your body's meant to be like, oh, no. So that's cold. You're like, maybe not that. And then someone's like, don't you want to be like a great boxer like Floyd Mayweather? You're like, bro, I think. So your energy pulls towards, I want to be a famous chef. So whatever feels stimulating based on the options that you've been exposed to through school, community, role models, TV, etc. Part of that, I think, is a responsibility to keep our species alive, which is procreation. Many people cannot have children, unfortunately. Many people are homosexual. I do believe that homosexual people have a responsibility to have children because not everyone in their family is gay, and there's a chance that their children won't be gay, and people had sex for them to be here. So the least they can do is pass it on. You know, yes, I understand you're not attracted to the opposite sex. It's fine. But you can do your bit to keep human beings alive. So maybe part of that is a purpose. Outside of that, it's whatever's stimulating, bro. For me, personally, I looked at the options that I've been exposed to. Sports. I could have put in my heart and soul into becoming a Springbok and one of the best rugby players in the world. I was a choir boy as well. I could have gone and been in the greatest choir on the planet, or gone into singing and become the greatest singer on the planet. I was pretty good at academics, so I could have been an academic. I could have focused on my books, gotten a PhD or a couple of PhDs, become a prof, write many books, get onto platforms, do research work. I ventured into business at some point. I could have become a businessman, dollar billionaire, the richest man in the world, the richest man of all time. In my research and my exposure and traveling parts of the world and meeting interesting people, the thing that appealed to me is human psychology, human behavior, anthropology, and the behavior of human beings in groups, which I think is sociology. Fascinated by that. Not the academics of it, but the reality of it. And when I studied that, I found myself down a rabbit hole of what influences human behavior, human thought. Initially, I got as far as money. And I realized money dictates a lot. Money dictates where people go to school, dictates where people go to work, where they move to, where they live. It dictates what people eat. It dictates the type of healthcare and medication they have and how long they get to live. It dictates the people that you decide to spend your life with and have children with. Money.
It also influences their behavior.
100%. 100%. But I realize what's more powerful than money is religion. Because there are people that are willing to not do certain things if their religion tells them to. What is halal, what is haram, what is kosher. And I was like, oh, okay. So if I tell certain people that religiously you cannot do this, doesn't matter how much money you pay them, they will not do it. Or they will do it and they'll say, I am serving God, Allah, etc. You're like, okay. So religion can be more powerful than money. But I realized there's something more powerful than religion, and that is language. And the reason money has power and the reason religion has power is because someone created language and they created story. But beyond language is the ability to influence minds. And I was like, if I can influence minds, that sounds exciting for me. So there are tools. Money is one. Words, religion, looks, I guess. I was chilling with Vusi Tembegwayo, and I think he said this in a closed space. It wasn't meant to be for public consumption, but I'll leak it. You can forgive me. He was saying part of the appeal, which is a fact, part of the appeal with certain human beings is not their talents. The talent is great, of course. But part of the appeal is raw, sexual. And he was saying some of the people that book him to speak, he speaks well. He's mastered his craft, his language.
Absolutely.
He's brilliant. His content, the way he delivers. But he says a big part of it is the female audience, they want to sleep with me. In everything that I've said, they're like, I'd let him hit. And the male audience is like, if I was a woman, I'd let this guy hit. Or I wish I was this guy, because if I was a woman, I would sleep with him. So there's these parts of society, or there's these parts of our lives which are animal. And I cannot be so naive as to think some of the reasons that people consume whatever I have to say don't have to do with how I look. Part of the appeal, part of the pheromones. This guy, he talks such rubbish, but he's not bad on the eye, Some guys are like, this guy talks a lot of shit, but, I think I'd follow this guy into war. He looks like the type of guy that would kill for me. The guy that I'm willing to kill for. That's just raw, The appeal of Andrew Tate. Part of it is how he looks. Part of it is his fighting. Part of it is just the animal inside. So, part of my purpose besides colonizing minds is getting people to also go to a higher plane of natural superiority. Be taller. If you can't breed with someone who's taller, be stronger. If you can't gym and be stronger, breed with someone who's going to be stronger. Accumulate as much information and knowledge and be the smartest person in the room. If not, be with someone who is that, or surround yourself with people like that. And constantly strive for a higher, outside of the human stuff, natural. Elon Musk challenged Mark Zuckerberg to a physical fight. Mark Zuckerberg has been doing a lot of training in mixed martial arts. He gyms, the guy surfs, he cycles, he lifts weights. This is a nerd who's pale, looks like an alien. Going back to animal. Mr. Beast, arguably the biggest YouTuber on the planet, has lost weight. He's lifting weights. He's going animal. Jeff Bezos looked like a middle-aged, aging man when he started. Today, fresh, bald head, dresses slick, lifts weights, built. At some point, we have to go back to animal. At some point, we have to go back to what's intrinsic. And that's why the highest form of human or man is having all the information and knowledge. And this is why Andrew Tate appeals to people. You want to be as tall as you can. You want to be as physically dominant as you can. You're like, I can beat up anyone. And 50 Cent, even though he looks like a gorilla, but he'll be attracted to the pretty looking woman. So his kids can be built like machines, but look good on the eye. You want to eat well. You want to dominate. You want to have money, etc. And become the highest form of whatever society deems you to be. And look, it's just what we're chasing. That can become your purpose. My purpose is to colonize minds and get people to plug into the highest form of self, whatever that looks like to you. And that would make me happy. And I want, when I die, if this is not a simulation, I want to compete with Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Haile Selassie, who they see as the return of Jesus for the Rastafarians, and any other religious leader. I want people to see me as a god, as the beginning and the end of their consciousness. I exist because Penuel explains it in this way. Not the Big Bang, not God creating Adam. Penuel says that when I opened my eyes and became conscious, the world came into existence. So my belief into where the world began, it began with me. As my consciousness, there was no world before that. How do you explain history? History as a manifestation of my consciousness. I created all these people to tell me that this is history, and I entertain them because I created them. When I go to sleep, they cease to exist. There is no China unless I believe it to be. There is no God and religion and wars and planets unless my consciousness believes it to be. And the center of my universe outside of myself is Penuel as my guiding light. Social experiment sounds like a bunch of rubbish, sounds like a cult, makes me happy.
You're having fun.
It elicits a response in people. It makes me unique because how many other people do you meet every day who are trying to do what I'm trying to do? That goes back to Peter Thiel. I'm looking to monopolize something that other people can't, which is a religion with me as the center. How many other people can replicate Christianity? You can't, because it needs Jesus. Without Jesus, it becomes something else. Not everyone, a lot of people want to be billionaires. A lot of people want to have great bodies. A lot of girls want to have big asses and they do BBLs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's BBLs.
Yeah, BBL.
Yeah, they do BBLs. A lot of girls want to be yellow bones and they bleach. A lot of guys want to travel the world. A lot of guys want to influence and sit with the most influential people. How many people do you meet every day that are trying to colonize minds and are trying to use a tool such as a belief system to hack people's minds and get them to fundamentally change their behavior and their beliefs. I think that's pretty dope. That
Sounds
makes me
cool.
happy.
Sounds cool. Who are some of the guys that influence you?
Jesus Christ, if he was ever real. As a fictional story, the Jesus story is pretty dope. To this day, there are people willing to kill, willing to die for the story, whether it was true or not. This is a sneaky question because I think you know some of the people I'm on a list who
I know.
should not be raised. Genghis Khan and the building of the Mongolian Empire. Adolf Hitler, in what he managed to do in a very depressed Germany. Not what he did to the Jews. I do not idolize that. But in the type of leader he was and what he did for Germany to build it to, I believe, the economy it is today, one of the top 3 in the world. In the same breath, Mao Zedong in China, communist China, and what China has been able to achieve. I don't know much of him, but one of the leaders of Singapore, Lee, not sure of his full name, but I think it's Lee, Yuan something. What he did with Singapore in a short space of time. I admire Tupac, man. Tupac ignited a fire in so many of us young guys in my era of consciousness. For young guys, he was well-read, well-mannered, well brought up, but he realized that the world wasn't great. And he did his bit using the tools he had, which was hip-hop and poetry, to challenge the world. And one of his famous quotes is, "I may not change the world, but I will spark the brain that changes the world." And I'd like to think he sparked a lot of our brains. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Lauryn Hill. She gave us one album, which I think is life-changing, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Then she did an unplugged version with VH1 Storytellers, which is some of the most conscious work you'll ever listen to. People ever go and listen to some of the lyrics and some of her songs there. Adam Lives in Theory, Freedom Time, Rebel. I love Rick Ross. Rick Ross, Maybach Music, money, being rich, billionaire, owns a huge farm, estate. That's the one side. And that's the side that appeals to the commercial. It's great. Everyone, the biggest boss. Huh?
Rose.
Then you actually listen to Rosé's lyrics. There is so much hidden consciousness there. In one of his songs, Freemason, on Teflon Dawn, he speaks about how we are the descendants of people that were able to build pyramids without caterpillars, and how we are the descendants of people that rule the world. People miss that just see this fat guy. Rick Ross drops a lot of wisdom and knowledge. If you actually take time to listen to his lyrics, I think he's a huge consciousness spreader. If you pierce through the veil and you go beyond the surface stuff. Jay-Z was also another guy who inspired a lot of people. I don't admire him personally, but I'm using him as an example of a lot of flash. Jay-Z's got money and Rockefeller, but a lot of consciousness and self-empowerment. Joe Rogan today, of course, as an alternative thinker with a huge platform. Lex Friedman is doing amazing work. Kanye West, one of the greatest minds we've ever had. Kanye motherfucking West, who's been able to become so rich, so influential, but has put in his heart and soul to try and defend his freedom of thought and freedom of expression. It's the reason why he says so much wild shit. It's not because he's crazy, as much as he might pretend that he takes meds. He doesn't. It's not religious. It's just him protecting himself. I believe Andrew Tate is doing the same by pretending that he's converted to Islam. I think it's a protection because a big part of the world is not ready for free thinkers. And they try to take out, like Jesus Christ, free thinkers like Tupac Shakur, like Thomas Sankara, Stephen Bantu Biko, Bob Marley, free thinkers. So you have to hide. Kanye hid behind takes medicine. Fuck that. He hides behind Jesus. Andrew Tate now is hiding behind Islam. I call bullshit. But Kanye has to say wild things, not because he believes in them, but as an experiment to say, I'm still a free thinker. I'm still a free thinker. So I'm going to say something wild because I'm rich, because I'm famous, and because you believe every rich, famous person has been conditioned to be part of the system. I want to remind you that I'm not. I'm still a free thinker. Yes, buy these Yeezys. Yes, make me rich. Yes, but I've bought land. I've gone off grid. It's got a song on Donda called Off Grid with 5-Year Foreign and Playboy Cardi. We off the grid. I'm going off grid. He speaks about planting our own food. He speaks about the culture. Who dictates the culture? Who owns the systems? That's a free man, a free thinker, working within the system, and he understands money is influence. He understands platform is influence. He understands that he must still make dope music, wear dope clothing, because that's what the fucking average mediocre minds think. But while the mediocre minds are here, I want to tell you something. He speaks about breaking through the matrix. He speaks about TV programs, how we tell kids you cannot do that. Tell your child to behave. According to who? That's a free thinker. So Kanye West, one of my favorite human beings of all time, Leonardo da Vinci, who I'm convinced, like George Orwell, is not an individual but an institution. I think Leonardo da Vinci was a collection of people or a school that gave off paintings, drawings, study in medicine, architecture, sculptures. I do not know if it was one man, and if it was, the greatest man of all time. Elon Musk, similar to Kanye West, another free thinker who every now and then says wild shit to remind people that I'm still a free thinker. I own Tesla, I own SpaceX. I've got all this money. I'm the richest man in the world. But I'll do something stupid like challenge Mark Zuckerberg to a fight. I'll say something crazy on Twitter and say mass media controls minds. Like, fuck, bro, but you own Twitter. You're like, yeah. I think the company is called X now. But it's like, yeah, but even though I own it, I want to let you know that we program you. He went and he said that when he bought Twitter, he saw that a lot of the propaganda stuff was asked by the government. And he said that the government requested a lot of data. He went and he said it. Said it. He didn't have to, but he did. What does he gain? Not fans, not followers, but he did it. What does the world do? The world doesn't do much, but it's there. You know what I mean? So I love Elon Musk a lot. He allows us to be brave. I mentioned Thomas Sankara, Bantu Bigo, Robert Sobukwe. They are parts of his legacy which are not great, but a very strong mind, a very passionate African, Robert Mugabe, Muammar Gaddafi and his vision for an African Union. The vision was not necessarily for an African Union, but for Africa to own itself. Stop being puppets of the West. Don't be puppets of the East. When are we going to have our agenda? When are other nations going to say, oh, we'd love to be part of Africa. Africa is doing dope things. Asia is rising, especially with the dragons of China. The West, we know the West. We know Europe and the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. But when is Africa going to have a base? We always have to beg and ask and plead. It's embarrassing. So yeah, Muammar Gaddafi, King Leopold of Belgium, a very controversial figure in Zaire, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And his story is told somewhat in The Legend of Tarzan, movie with Margot Robbie, Samuel L. Jackson. Without ever setting foot in Zaire, the Republic of the Congo, he sent people there to go colonize it. And he dominated. Now, I do not believe in his methods. A lot of the people there had their hands chopped off if they weren't meeting the quotas of rubber. I think very brutal. Millions of people killed. People have argued that the reason Hitler is demonized is because he killed white Jews. And the reason King Leopold is not spoken about is because he killed black Africans. The reason Mao is not mentioned that much is because he killed his own Chinese people. So it becomes an agenda argument that, some lives are worth more than others. All men are created equal. Some are more equal than others. That's George Orwell, Animal Farm. Yeah. But in the ability to colonize minds and to get people to do things. Again, I have a wish to colonize minds, and these are the people. These are the people that have been able to influence and hack minds. Nelson Mandela, another weirdly later becomes a polarizing figure. Initially, everyone loved him. All of a sudden, we're like, did he give his people, the black people he was meant to liberate, the best deal? Or did he sell out on the vision and the agenda? And the argument becomes, to what end? Did he make the right decision? What decision would you have made? Are South Africans better off, worse off? Becomes a conversation. So Jacob Zuma, another person under the ANC, which has become a very bad political party for South Africa. But as a political leader under a captured ANC, which is funded by white businesses here and abroad, comes in and becomes almost the first real African leader we've seen in a while He's a polygamist. He has multiple wives. When he gets on platforms, he speaks his native isiZulu. He's seen in places dancing ukugida nokusina, which is a traditional Zulu dance. He drinks umqombothi, the African Zulu beer. He is seen with the Zulu men. In some of his movements, he references Ubuntu, which some people might call nepotism, some people might call corruption. Is he taking a bribe? No, he says it's Ubuntu. Someone is thanking him with cattle. No, that's a bribe. No, it is not. In Africa, it is called this. So it challenged. He sang something that Africans did. He danced. He told story. So he comes in and he challenges minds, especially of us educated black children who have a good grapple of the English language of the Queen. All of a sudden, we are being challenged. Is this man a baboon? Why is he dancing on stage? There are so many dignitaries around the world. Can he not compose himself? He's an African leader. He dances, he sings.
That's
he's
what
been
we
seen
do.
wearing ipeshu. This is what Africans do. So I admire people like that challenge the minds and can hack the minds and can get people. Jacob Zuma's got people that fight for him even when he's never asked. It's very similar to a Jesus figure. The Jews look up to Moses, who freed the Israelites from the Egyptians. He seemed to free them physically, but did he free them mentally? Because we have got Israelites in the form of Africans today, even in South Africa today, who yearn for an apartheid South Africa where they had jobs, where there was less crime. We have freed you from the Egyptians physically, but have we freed you psychologically? And can you own yourself? Kind of metaphors that still ring true today. So those are some of the people that I admire.
And it's so fascinating because all of them are just tapping into the brain.
Yeah. That's all I'm about, boy.
Have you seen Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Mask?
I've never read. My brother's busy reading that book. Because I believe in cheating these days, I watch a lot of videos that summarize books, that summarize the core concepts. So with Frantz Fanon and the ideologies he was challenging, and the book you're referencing, is it Black Skin,
Yeah.
White Mask? Yeah, I understand the concept of what the book was trying to speak to.
Because it pretty much speaks to what you're saying, right? The fact that most Africans were liberated from apparently political, and then later on it's like where their minds liberated, right? Because in as much as you have independence and you're still thinking as how you're thinking before, what has changed? And I think our mind is one of the most powerful tools again, right? And the person who controls it literally controls you and
Boom.
The next person.
Bantu Bigo says the most powerful tool, I might be paraphrasing, the most powerful tool in the hands of the oppressed,
Is the
of the oppressor, is the
the
mind of the oppressed. And that's just the fact. The mind challenging. There was something I wanted to say, but I wanted to say this. What a lot of people don't understand, because they hear me speak about some of these things and they're like, but you sound conscious. Why are you not pushing black consciousness? Why are you not a Pan-Africanist? It is because I am the future of what would have happened if you owned yourself and were self-determined and were truly free. Freedom isn't going back to an African way of living and wearing African clothing and eating African food. It's living that, owning it, and progressing beyond. I'm at a point now where I respect all great people and I respect all ideologies and I respect all views, but I've transcended them. I'm beyond. I think some of the guys in Dubai, some of the guys in Silicon Valley, some of the guys in Hong Kong are living in the future. People like Kanye West, Elon Musk. I'm living in the future. That's why I'm not speaking isiZulu. I can. And because I'm speaking English, it doesn't mean I'm colonized. It means I can speak in isiZulu to Zulu speakers, but I can speak to a wider audience and I can take along Zulu people and put them on a plane where they are winning. We can colonize English. We can colonize French and make it our own. And French people and English people can come to us and say, is this really English? And we say no, and we can change what it's called. We have the ability to colonize. We can go and colonize the United Kingdom and send Africans there and have them sleep with all the people there and have colored babies. A lot of Lewis Hamiltons, a lot of Stephen Bartlett's, Trevor Noah's, Drake's there. We can do that. You don't have to contain your mind. The counter to colonial systems is not the old African systems. It's a merger of the best of both, a fusion, and then something futuristic. And that's where my head is at. And that's why people on either side, they don't get me. You're a puppet for the West. Why are you speaking for black people? Does this mean you hate whites? I'm like, your brain is so primitive to me. You won't get it. I understand you, but you won't get me. I'm living in the future and I'm trying to drag as many of you as possible to get there with me.
So should we agree to guys like yourself, like Kanye West, like Elon, guys that we don't understand? It's because we don't understand them because their minds are so complex and so evolved, and they're thinking more about the future such that we cannot comprehend it.
So many human beings love following. Unfortunately, most human beings were built to follow, and they love leaders, and they love leaders they can identify with. The problem with us is we are leaders who are trying to enlighten and empower you so you can find the leader in yourself. That's why there's that disconnect and that cognitive dissonance, and you don't get it. If you admire Jesus, if you admire Kanye West, the whole point is to find that in you. It's not to follow them. When Jesus said, I'm God's son, and he went and he counted the beliefs of the day, he wasn't saying, yes, he said, believe in me and you shall have eternal life. But he was saying, I'm a free thinker. I can hang with prostitutes and pimps and drug dealers. I'm free and I believe in love and community. A good Christian is not, I love Jesus and I read the Bible. It's be like him. Go against the status quo. Go and do community work. Find the God in you and be God or God's son. And when people like myself say that, I'm called blasphemous. And I'm like, I'm actually the embodiment of the person you're following. You're not meant to be the lamb, you're meant to be the lion. Like, that's the struggle I think most people have. And that's the struggle that people like us need to embrace, which is one of the things I'm embracing. And I tell people, because they're like, you're building a cult. And I'm like, sure. But cult plus time equals religion. I'm trying to mentally liberate those that want it and are ready for it and understand there's a high cost, because when you're free, you now have to create your own perspective and perception of reality. And that's difficult. It's easier to go back to what's normal and what's comfortable and what's expected. For everyone else, I'm like, you can follow me. So I admire Kanye so much that I don't want to wear Yeezys. I will build my own clothing brand, Penuel. That's how Kanye inspired me. But for everyone else who admires Kanye, but is not willing to go through the hard work of creating their own clothing, they can wear Yeezys. You know, the whole concept of admiring Elon Musk is not, I love Elon Musk so much, I'm going to buy a Tesla. I love Elon Musk so much, I'm going to create my own technology. Elon Musk is inspired by Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein. And he said, I'm going to build something, I'm going to create something. He didn't say, let me see what these guys did and let me follow. No, that's the whole point. The point is to take what these guys are saying and to reimagine that for yourself. I love Leonardo da Vinci. I'm not going to sell the Mona Lisa. I'm going to create my masterpiece. Like, that's the whole point. And for the people that don't get it, wear Mona Lisa t-shirts. And then for others, go create your own. Che Guevara, that's another amazing guy. If you want to be like Che, become Thomas Sankara. Don't, I stand with the Cubans. I'm here with Ernesto Guevara de la Serna. I'm a revolutionary of the Cuban. No, man, you're just a follower. And that's fine. So we need to understand that some people will follow us and then we must be responsible leaders. And then for other people, like, guys, if you get it, go become great. You took what you took from me. The student became the master. Go show it. Go be that. Go become greater than me. Go become your own God. For everyone else, I'll be your God. Follow me. And then I'll tell you what to do.
Ultimately, is your goal that the fact that people who follow you should at some point challenge you and come up with their own beliefs too? Is that what you aspire?
At the highest level. I had an amazing conversation with a lady who consulted with me. I do online consultations and she was motivated by my Penuelism belief. And one of the things I said to her is I take a lot of feedback. I think that's going to be the power of while I'm alive, building a belief system that is modern. These other ones are thousands of years old. This one's modern. This is new, fresh. I have the ability to build something flexible. And part of what I'm seeing is I'm going to need to build a hierarchy in my belief system. There's going to be the people at the bottom, the loyal servants, the cult followers. Whatever Penuel says,
Yes, sir.
he is my leader, he is right. If he says we must drink pee, we'll drink pee. Sure. I then have to be responsible and be like, don't drink pee. It's not good for you. Then there's going to be layers. There's going to be the people who are like, look, I'm, let's say, a pastor or a preacher in this belief system. And I will teach the Penuelism principles. I will challenge people. People will come to me for guidance. They can't reach Penuel, but they can reach me as an ambassador. Then there's going to be levels above that. I mean, the Christian church has been split. Roman Catholic, Anglican, etc., Protestant. Then there's going to be the highest level of Penuelist. That highest level is going to be the person who is not a Penuelist. That's going to be the person that's going to be like, I'm the highest level of Christian. I have created Buddhism. And later on, when people ask what inspired you, they will say Penuel. So you're a Penuelist? No. I'm Renatist. I'm me and I've built my own thing. But I stand on the shoulders of people that inspired us. I mean, Julius Malema as a leader has inspired so many of us because we accepted the ANC, PAC, IFP, Azapo, APLA, MK, these leaders as our incumbents. We will follow them. Julius went and challenged what we thought was it and inspired a generation of young leaders. I'd like to think people like myself, Nhlanhla Lux, we have to say shout out to Julius for that. But Julius references Peter Mokaba, Nelson Mandela before him. And some of these other guys like Thomas Sankara references a Che Guevara, etc. Nelson Mandela references people before him. So generally nothing is new. If you ever study the history of religion and theology, you will understand that Christianity is younger than Judaism. And between Christianity and Islam, I'm not sure which one came first. Judaism comes from Abraham. Abraham who said he spoke to God. These are Abrahamic faiths. Before Abraham, there was something else. Hinduism is older than Christianity. And before Hinduism, there are other belief systems. And when you study Christianity, when you look at things like Easter, when you look at the Virgin Mom, a lot of these belief systems borrow from things before. So you realize a lot of things are remade. So even in Penuelism principles, I can't say I invented be kind to your neighbor. I may reference Jesus, but Jesus may reference someone else, and someone else might call it a universal principle kind of situation. So at the highest level of my belief system are going to be people that say, I started off as a cult follower. I wore the black every day, and whenever Penuel said this, and then I went and I became a pastor and a preacher, and then I became a scholar of Penuelism. And then in the writing of the scripture and developing Penuelism, I then deviated. And I'm like, at this point, thank you so much to Penuelism for the journey. I have now found the ultimate level of self. And I now am my own God. When you think of Dragon Ball Z, and I don't know if you know Dragon Ball Z, an anime, it's this Japanese anime, Super Saiyans, where you go through these levels where every time you fight and you fight tough opposition, you become stronger. And they go into these chambers where they become, and they morph into different characters. At the highest level, you say, thank you through this journey of helping me find God in me. I am now going to be God. I am now going to become the beginning and the end of my life and of the lives of all the people that are going to follow me. And if I get to that, and for the people that get to that, I will be like, whatever little purpose and social experiment, I did it and I'm happy. And then for everyone else, I'll be content that they've found an alternative home. I have issues with Islam, praying 5 times a day. I can't eat pork. The Jewish people, everything must be kosher. I can't eat pork. African spirituality, they want us to believe in these things and what. This church believes in what. Penuelism, okay. Yeah, no, I think I like this home. So if other people are like, this is my home, I'm like, for giving you an alternative home, at least you have a home and you have a family and a community, and you guys must win. Because if you're not winning under Penuelism, please go find another belief system. A lot of people have adopted belief systems where they are poor and struggling and landless. My God will provide. You're like, nah, I think you need another belief system. Because for other people, their gods provide. And you can see it in real time. So I'm just trying to give an alternative to what's out there and something fresh and new, which will challenge the existing, because I am trying to steal, right?
Still
I'm
like
trying
an
to steal,
artist.
I'm trying to steal believers of other faiths to unplug their brains from those apps and plug them into my wavelength.
I mean, I think nothing is new under the sun, right?
Arguably, yeah.
And so it's like, pick your heroes and still like an artist.
Boom.
Pero, thank you so much, brother.
My brother, thank you so much for inviting me to this platform. I'm looking forward to you growing, not just as a platform, not just as a podcaster, but number one, you have a responsibility because the universe picked you to go through an institution like the African Leadership Academy. And it's not about the academy more than it is the people that you have met in the academy and the people you will meet through the academy. You have a responsibility to yourself to become the greatest version of yourself. And I hope through this platform and the people you'll meet and the work that you'll do and the people that you will connect us to, we can shift the world for the better. There are people that run this world. I'd like to think they're doing a good job. And for a big part, they are. You know, we have comfortable freedoms. We can travel around the world. We can eat sort of what we like. We can even challenge them to some degree. It's great. But I do think we believe there's an even better version of the world. All parts of the world can be run better. And I think we have a responsibility to, through some of our conversations and our work, to do that. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck in that work. And in everything that you do, always stick to your why. Remember your why. Why am I doing this? And please have fun. Because if you're not having fun, stop. Doesn't matter if the whole world is saying do it. Stop. Be like, I'm not enjoying it. I'm not going to serve a purpose for 50 years and be miserable and bleed and cry. Stop. Do what's fun and what serves a purpose.
Thank you, sir. And I
Thanks,
hope we
brother.
are also able to inspire other people to do the same.
Thank you.
Cheers.